So Durwood, thanks for coming. Our goal today is to kind of get to know the Durwood Swanson story and a little bit about you for the benefit of the kids, and sports will be a big part of that. But also, in the beginning there was a mom and dad. Tell me about your parents.
Well, my dad was ended up working for Crescent Tool Company. He'd worked for First National and worked on the railroad as a young man. He was born of Swedish parents on a sweet road up between Blackville and Panama.
Okay.
And he was the youngest, he had a twin sister. Mm-hmm. And I had two older brothers. And all of them, none of them had any interest in sports. Mm-hmm. But my dad did, and he took me as a young kid to a lot of games. My mother really wasn't interested other than in high school when I played, right. And she'd go to the games. She was from Union City, and Dad met her while working on the railroad with her father, who also was working on the railroad.
Oh, really?
Way back in the early 1900s. So my dad got me interested in sports at an early age, and I can vaguely remember going to Celeron and watching the Jamestown, I think it was the Jamestown team play when they got put in that league for a short time. But then I very vividly remember going to Allen Park and watching in 1940, watching the games. And then, of course, Municipal Stadium in 1941. And we lived in Blackville, New York. And it was a drive into Jamestown, so we wasn't there every night, but we saw a notable number of games, and we used to park up on Curtis Street and walk down through a path through the brush and bushes. We parked up there because the crowds were pretty good, and it was easy to get out the back roads up there. And so I've been watching Jamestown baseball for a long, long time, probably as long as anybody except Russ Dietrich probably can match me.
Well, and I don't even know that, but yeah, it's remarkable. So when you were growing up, it was in Blackville. Whereabouts in Blackville?
Right across from the cemetery, not too far from the Four Corners. And I went to Panama High School after sixth grade. Blackville had an elementary school, and we built our house in 1946 in Blackville, and we moved to Asheville for a year, and I got acquainted with a lot of Asheville kids, and then back to Blackville, and then it was time to enter junior high school at Panama Central School.
So what's your date of birth?
Pardon?
What's your date of birth?
July 15th, 1934. I'm 91 years old now.
You hide that so well.
Yeah.
You hide it well, Durwood. And so, do you remember? See, it's 1934. So you would have been 7 years old on December 7th, 1941. Do you remember Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I do.
What do you remember about it?
Well, what happened? So many ships got blown up and people killed, and everything was so unexpected, That's the main thing. Of course, I was young and didn't probably realize the total effects, what I was going to start another segment of World War II. And but I do remember it, yeah.
Do you remember any reaction, whether it was on the radio, whether your mom and dad talked about it?
Well, they talked about it. Mom and Dad and I used to go up on the Swede Road, and usually on Sunday, and talk. My dad would talk to his two brothers. Mm-hmm. His sister wouldn't enter too much, but her husband would, and they would talk politics. And of course, war was the thing. They'd talk war and what they would do, and it was a big event for them on Sundays to get together.
I've enjoyed reading a book which I'm sure you've seen, Harmony Recollections, Mid-20th Century Narratives by Pam Brown and others. And right at the get-go, there's a story of which you're very much a part of, and it occurred on July 15th, 1944, and you would have been 10 years old. And can you recall that?
Yes. It was a Nelson boy who lived, well, wasn't a boy, he was older than me, and he was in the service, and he was an Air Force pilot. And he was about to go overseas that year, and he came with his, flew over his parents' house in Blockville one time, and then he came back, circled around. It was on my birthday, and circled around, and it was only about a block away his parents lived, and way low. And he flew over their house, his parents' house, and it clipped the top of the trees in the neighbor's house there with this big Air Force bomber, and couldn't get it rise, and crashed into a hill just outside of Blockville, what we called North Hill.
So, do you recall hearing anything, or was there noise? Was there?
I ran back into the house. I was scared. My dad rushed over to the scene before all the federal people got there, and he saw one of the tail gunners. The tail had busted off, and he'd fallen off, and he was sitting on a rock over there. I remember, sort of dazed, but I could talk to my dad a little bit before the official people got there and got all civilians out of there. So I remember that, and it was. I remember telling my mom, "Oh, all these bad things happen on my birthday."
Now, at some point, did you ever go over to the site?
Oh yeah, many times I had been over there on the site. It was sort of scary every time I went over there, but you had this feeling and really recalled what had happened.
Just for the camera, it was a B-24 Liberator on its way to Europe, and a guy named Levine Nelson.
Levine,
thank you. Levine Nelson was piloting the plane, flying over his parents' home in Blockville to tip his wings. And just as you said, the second pass through, he clipped the trees and couldn't get any altitude and crashed. And the crash site was east of the curve in the Open Meadows Road, where the Butts Road goes north over there. That sound about right?
Yep. We called that North Hill on that Levine, and where he crashed.
And for those who read the book, you'll see a picture of Durwood in 1952, and a more recent one, kind of wearing the same sweater as you are here today. Fantastic. So this is being 10 years old, and you're at that time, was the school you were going to, was there a schoolhouse in Blockville? Or?
Yeah, it was a two-room schoolhouse. Grades 1, 2, and 3 were together. One teacher, and she taught no kindergarten back then, and grades 3, 4, and 5 in another room. And we had a basement there, and it wasn't 10 foot high, the basement. That was the gym. And that's where we had to play basketball when we were in grade school. But we went out on the softball field when the weather was good and played games over there. Pom-pom pull away was one of them, and all kinds of tag games.
Where was it located?
It was located not far from where the airplane crashed. Okay. It was on the same road leading out of Blockville towards Open Meadows and Stedman, and it was probably not more than a quarter of a mile from where the plane crashed. There was a brick schoolhouse. It's now privately owned. I was sort of hoping that in this day and age, the Historical Society or somebody would take it over, but it's somebody out of town owns it, and it's not of any value to the community now.
But the building's still there.
Yeah, oh yes, it's a nice brick building.
Yeah. And from there, at the fourth grade, where did you go then?
Well, from fourth grade, I went into Blockville. You know, we had 4, 5, and 6. It was just in another room.
Okay.
When I was going to sixth grade, that's when we moved to Asheville. My dad was building a house in Blockville. We owned a store on the Four Corners, and in Blockville, and everything was rationed back to wartime, so it was hard. So we were building a house, and I went to Asheville grade school, my sixth grade, but then back, our house was built, the bus came from Panama, and off to Panama I'd go every day.
During the war, we just talked about Pearl Harbor, but do you remember what life was like during that time period?
Well, the main thing, everything was rationed. You couldn't, you have the coupons you had to deal with in the stores. They would have, at night sometimes, drills where everybody was supposed to, the siren would ring or the whistle would blow at Green Brothers in our case, and everybody had to turn off their lights. Yep. And keep them off for a period of time. So that's the biggest things I remember about wartime.
So those are the blackouts?
Yep.
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 Did it affect your dad at all as far as gas rations?
Oh yeah, we got rid of the store. I can't remember. I think it was before, right after the war. It was so hard. My folks didn't want to continue with it. And
what kind of store was it?
Grocery store. Okay. A grocery. It became Bush's Grocery up there. Mm-hmm. And I had him sponsor all my teams that I developed from that area. So.
Do you remember when the war ended? This would have been June of 1945 and August of 45. Do you remember was any celebration?
I don't really remember the celebrations and stuff when the war ended.
You'd been 11, you know.
Yeah, I was still, had other things on my mind, I guess, at that age.
So then off you go to Panama.
Yeah.
And did you get involved in sports there?
Yeah, right from the get-go. We played, they had a junior high basketball team, which I was on, and very successful, and 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, very successful. And then I played junior varsity, and then varsity both my junior and senior years. And my senior year, I was like the fourth and fifth man on the team. Mm-hmm. But we set every offensive record in the history of the school, and had a home court, undefeated on the home court. Beat Clymer one time. They were only loss of the season. They whipped everybody else and won the section title, but got upset by Frewsburg and Bemis Point. So we finished second in the league, and second meant nothing back then. You had to win the league to go on, and no state title or anything, section. Gary Clark, who went on to play at Syracuse, played on a Frewsburg team. So that was a tough game. But we said everything. There was an article in Post Journal about us, picture and stuff, and that was good. And the guy that wrote the book that you're referring to came to see me play our team, and wrote a nice story about me because I became one of his ones he looked up to from that early age.
Well, I'm going to read it here in a second. Then, when you graduated, what year did you graduate from Penn?
1952. I was voted student council president my senior year. And it's funny, Panama never had dancing. You know, the Baptist church and the Methodist church in Panama were, and I'm not a dancer. I'm still not a dancer, but who had to go to the board? I and Art Bailey, who passed away a while ago, was going to Panama, where the two of us, along with two others, had to go to the board, try to get dancing approved by the school board. Okay. And we were successful. And at the prom, we had a square dance was our prom. And they've had dancing ever since. But I was involved getting that there, even though I wasn't a dancer myself and could care less.
Well, and by then Art would have had, I'm sure, you know, because of the polio.
Yeah, he had that. Well, I think probably his freshman or sophomore year, he had a bad case of it. But he survived and went on to bigger and better things.
No question, no question. And then from there, this is now 52. Korea War is on. Were you subject to draft? Were you draft eligible?
Oh yes. When I graduated, I went to college, Ithaca College, 4 years, radio and TV, and they let you go through college, but I knew when I graduated from college it'd be about 6 months before I got drafted, and it was maybe 7. Graduated in June, and in January I got drafted the next year.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading the article about the guy who looked up to you as a hero. Durwood Swanson went to Ithaca College after graduation from Panama, where he received a Bachelor of Science in a degree in radio and television. 6 months later, you were drafted in the United States Army, and after basic training, went to New York City, and we'll pick it up from there.
Yeah, that was something. I remember we all were grouped from Fort Meade, where I took basic training, and they announced where each guy was going, and they announced Durwood Swanson, Army Pictorial Center, Long Island City, New York City. And when that meeting was over, about 5 kids said, "Who'd you know to get sent there?" And what congressman? And they said they'd talked to a congressman, and I've never heard of the place. I've never been to New York City. So I went to the Army Pictorial Center, and it was used to be, before the Army took it over, it was Paramount Studios, motion picture studio. So it was a big place. And I worked, we made training films and advertisements for Army. And a big program every month was a Get Set Go Army, where the Army band from that area would come in with a big name star. Rosemary Clooney was one of them. One of the Crosby boys came in one time, and so big stars would come in. And my job was keep track of the Army hours that went into these productions. And I worked in the office and did that. But as I got there, it was sort of the start of the baseball season, and I saw that tryouts for the baseball team.
Wow.
So I tried out, and I made the team as just a private, just out of basic training. And, you know, the sergeants and lieutenants and stuff were on that team. And here, this lowly private makes the team. And I played center field. And we practiced every day. I worked in the morning and either played a game or practiced baseball in the afternoon. And our barracks were right there across from the Pictorial Center, and we had access to New York City. So it was a fortunate thing. It was the last year of the New York Giants, who were at the Polo Grounds, and the Brooklyn Dodgers at Ebbets Field. So if I wasn't playing, I'd jump in my uniform, kept it on, and went to a major league game. And you could go at any of those ballparks free of charge with your Army uniform on. And then the USO in New York, if they have tickets left over plays and things, you could have them. And so that was great duty in New York. And I played better on that Army team playing pros. And they had one team had a pro that had won the New York Penn League home run title the year before. I forget his name, Simkowski or some Polish name like that. And it was a really good baseball, and I hit 315 over 100 times at bat, and really had a good year. I was fast, and I really had a strong arm too. And that was great. I think I liked that as much as the successes I had in local softball.
So here you are, tough duty in the Army.
Yeah, and I made the post basketball team too. And we started our season, and then word came down there were about 10 of us from the Army Pictorial Center that were going to ship overseas to various special services. And my assignment was Korea. Seoul, Korea. It was right in the middle of Seoul. Seoul was all blown up. There wasn't a place over 3 stories high. Unbelievable now when I see pictures. It looks like New York City. But it was just shot up and in shambles. But that was our base, and I was at AFKN. That's the main radio station. We had branch stations. The Army, we broadcast all over Korea. And was a job there. Now it's sports some, and worked in supply, and played. It was sort of like college. It was I didn't make the post team. That was basketball. That was in between times when you tried out. But I was PA announcer for the Seoul Area Command football games in the fall. And I captained the AFKN bowling team, and had pretty good duty over there too.
How long were you there?
I was only there. I was surprised to get shipped out of New York. I had less than a year to go. Uh-huh. And usually you don't get shipped overseas for less than a year or so. It was less than a year, and I got out in January 1959. Did
they have you educate or mentor other people, or were you just sort of...
That's my career was in radio and television, and that got me really good Army duty, to you. In Korea, a music teacher, that's what he was in civilian life, he had been tutoring some kids in English. And when he left, he asked me, would you be interested in picking up? So I started tutoring these teenagers, they were older ones, and college, and helped them with their English, talked with them and things, and that got me interested in teaching. That it wasn't the career I had planned, and I really liked it. The Korean students were very dedicated. So when I came back, I worked a year, and then I went to Fredonia and got my master's degree along with my teaching certificate, and started to teach in 6th grade in the Panama Central School system. So that's how it changed, but it was all due to all this Army. But I credit my radio TV background for making the Army easy.
Then you come back here and start teaching in Panama. Was that foregone conclusion that you were going to come back home?
No, it was not. And a matter of fact, Gail Chapman, who is principal at Randolph Schools, was sort of in charge of this program at Fredonia at the time. And when I got through with it, he offered me a job at Randolph, but Albert Palmer, who had known me, offered me a job at Panama. So I went back to Panama instead of Randolph back then. And that's where I stayed, teaching 6th grade, 4 years at Panama, and then Asheville 4 years, which is connected with Panama, and then got elementary principal job. And that was a hard decision. I loved teaching, and I was doing some coaching at the time. And but I felt I'll do it. And I was a climber for 22 years. Had 2 schools. It was hard. Clymer Elementary and Findlay Lake had an elementary school. So I had to travel back and forth between the 2. It was a hard job, but and I wasn't involved in sports except my bowling was where I got highly involved. But I was playing softball in the summertime, and I had a really good career in softball.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So you're clearly an athlete. You
Yeah.
played in the Army. You come back, and you got time at nights.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, we should probably enter into this picture. At some point, you got really lucky and married Jerry.
Yeah.
Met and married Jerry. How did you meet her?
I met her. That's a unique story. After I finished graduate school, I felt I owed myself something for doing it. And so I was searching for a trip to Europe. And it was pretty costly most trips. But a friend of mine, Harold Johnson, who was a high school principal in Panama, and a Panama grad himself, was up, he had left and gone up to Erie County and was teaching at Alden. And he knew I was like, he said, gee, the Erie County teachers are having a tour to Europe. And it was about half the cost, big savings from anything I had found out about. And he got me, even though I was in Erie County, he talked his way, getting me into it. So here I am on the airplane going across the Atlantic Ocean to visit these countries. And my future wife sat next to me.
I'll be darned.
And over there were two different buses. We weren't on the same bus, but we'd get together when we stopped and stuff. And it was a month's tour of Europe. And so that's where I met her. We come back home, and I dated her for a year. And she was a teacher in Buffalo. And we got married and moved on there, and she subbed for a while. Then she got a permanent job too.
Wow.
So,
That's pure serendipity.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
wow.
they're really different.
Well, you got lucky. You married up, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah.
So you have nights, while you're teaching during the day, preparing for school, stuff like that, but you have time. How did you get kind of into the local sports scene?
Yeah. Well, I had, even from when I was in grade school, I organized a team with Asheville kids and Blackfield kids, and we got a good pitcher, and we came in, I got them in the Muni League.
This
And
is hardball.
Yeah, this is hardball. D, the lowest class, and it went all the way up where steel partitions. And I got to meet Russ Eklund and Jim Fulford and Winterborn and a bunch of locals. And we whipped them. We whipped them with that team. Jack Brown, they couldn't hit him.
Is that this article here?
Yeah, and so I was known by the Jamestown kids ever since then. But then I had my team, Green Brothers Lumber. I entered them in the fast pitch softball league, and this is when Jim Adamczak and was at his prime. We had 8 teams in the league back then, but it dwindled down to 4, and that was the end of it after a couple of years. No one wanted to face Jim Adamczak. He was too good. Best ever in our area, in my mind. I know one. The people before me had mentioned some pitcher, but Jim Adamczak was. And so we went to pitch in Erie and places, but he'd pitch here in local softball. And I played on one of his all-star teams.
Wow.
And he wanted me on his team, but I always had my own team and felt connected with my local players. And we played, and then finally...
I want to pause for a second, because though the fast pitch that I remember as a kid watching, I didn't play, but Jim and Steve Adamczak and Ron Neubauer and, the Spets and Lefty Gustafson.
Parsons, George Parsons.
Yeah. And Stravatos and all of that.
Yeah.
How did it set up? Was it 8 teams originally?
Originally it was, but then it went down to 4 teams involved in it, and at that time, Green Brothers was in it, and we were competitive. We had a bunch of teachers out there who had played, and we were competitive, and met Jim's team in the finals one year and managed to win a game, but then got blown out. And it quickly...
This was also was this also Caesar House? Was that part of
That's later.
Later, okay.
And you hear a lot of that group, you know, but you don't hear too much of the group era that I played with. And I finally, Donny Deppus, after my team sort of folded, a lot of teachers went elsewhere on jobs, on the Moose team. And I had great success on the Moose team. And then finally, the open fastball ended in Jamestown. And this period of time, I read in Buffalo doesn't even have fastball. So it was not slow pitch, never played slow pitch. It was modified. And I eventually got on the First Lutheran team, which won 34 out of 35 games over
the church league,
and the church league over a 2-year period. And I couldn't believe how successful I was. I kept track of the cutouts in my book. I must have had over 500 in that league. And we had a really good team. Veer Lindquist, who later became coach at Jamestown, was on that team. He was a really good player. And I was sort of getting older at that time. And for the first time, Veer moved me out of center field. He played center field and I played left field. But that was a very successful time. And I made the all-star teams. I made the all-star teams in fast pitch with the group we've already mentioned. That was a lot of fun playing. And I even played with Harmony and later became Green Brothers in the county baseball league, but never had the success like I did in the Army because we were practicing every day.
Sure.
And in the county, one day, if maybe, or just before the game, and I never reached the shape and the ability that I had on that Army team.
Well, it brings back we were at that little event that the Sports Hall of Fame put together with fast pitch, alumni people, and just the memories that came out of all of that.
All this time teaching and administrating, I was involved in bowling. Marty Haynes, and I was in Harmony Lanes opened in Panama too when I was teaching up there, and I became secretary treasurer of a league for 14 years and got on the board here in Jamestown, and eventually became president of the Jamestown Association, and got put on state board and went through all the offices there. Marty Haynes got me involved in that because he went through them and president, and became president of New York State Bowling Association. And this is when bowling was big. We have 17 alleys here around Chautauqua County. And so I was state president, and it was a big deal. The banquet was here in Jamestown because the president was from Jamestown, and the ballroom was full of guests and stuff for that. And I was sort of mediocre in bowling. I did have one 700 series, but and averaged in the high 170s. So bowling was a big thing with me. So I was involved in sports all my life. And now, as a member of the investors and the Tarp Skunks, I'm still involved but in a different way.
Well, we're glad you are, and because all those years, Durwood, you were involved in the advisory committees with the Jammers, and then of course Mike Bellani got everybody together, and you and I, among others, did all that research for the book. That was fun.
I can remember you and I and the author, what was his name?
Dave Muley.
Muley and Russ Dietrich over at Fredonia at the white end before they closed down to reopen now. But we were talking over the final phases of that book. Yeah, I did a lot of research for that in Prendergast Library.
That was fun.
And I reported it all to you, and that's where I really got to know you real well.
And that whole crazy story was, and I attribute Mike Bellani, because the Riches had just brought the Niagara Falls franchise down here, that whole story, when the Expos left. And Mike thought, gee, you have such a rich history, you ought to preserve it and do a book. I mean, that's Mike.
Right.
You guys do the book. And he got it all enthusiastic, and we didn't know quite how to do that, but we divided it up. I think each of us took 5 years. I forget how it worked, but everybody would report, and we convinced Dave Muley, who was an intern. He was just an intern writing for the summer, that maybe there was a bigger project if he got all this information and did a book, and he did.
Yeah, and that gives you can look back in that and gain a lot of insight into the former Jamestown Falcons.
Absolutely. It was great, and then we did, of course, a lot of stuff along those lines. Aside from the research, we did all those interviews like we're doing now, with former ball players, the O'Neills, the Parkhursts, and all that, Johnny Schmitz, and
I remember all those names.
Johnny Pollock.
Ted Bartz was the big first baseman.
And so we, Frankie Heller. So we really reached out and did what we're doing now, preserving history in the 90s. And that was just a lot of fun. And everybody told stories. And
I can remember when we were at Detroit Tiger Farm Club, they came to play an exhibition game in Jamestown. And there was such a big crowd, it was an overflow, and they roped off out in the outfield. So I remember standing out there in right field watching that game. I forget what year it was in.
I'll tell you exactly. It was 1946.
Okay.
Right after the war. And the Tigers had won the World Championship the year before. So they were the World Champion 1945 Tigers. And John Yackham, remember John, bought the club from a guy named Harry Bisgeyer. So John had just gotten out of the war, and so he was, loaded with all kinds of, used the term piss and vinegar, but he reached out to the Tigers, the World Champion Tigers, and during the All-Star break, while a couple of guys like Greenberg and others went to the All-Star game, the team came here. So if you can imagine, I tell the story all the time, the world champion prior year, world champions came here to play their Class D affiliate. Unheard of.
Yeah, that was something. And that people turned out for it too.
Well, major leaguers right there.
Another quick story on Dad and I were out in Cleveland, Bob Feller Day, and they had a booklet of Bob Feller. And a few years later, quite a few years later, Bob Feller visited a Jamestown game. And I went down on the first base bleachers and set myself down beside him with these two books and got his autograph. And he said, man, these are in good shape. You've kept them in good shape. I can remember him making that comment.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned the fact that, gosh, Celeron, if you saw a game at Celeron, that would have been 1939.
Right. Yeah, I would have been 5 years old.
Yeah.
That's vaguely.
Yeah.
As my memory recalls, and you might be able to, home plate and first base and right field went down towards the north of the lake, and then the third base line went down pointing up Burtis Bay, up the lake.
Absolutely correct.
And we were sitting, Dad and I, on the third base bleachers or whatever they had there, I remember.
Yeah.
But that's very vaguely, but then I really remember going to Allen Park in 1940.
Yeah, 1940. My gosh, I think you've got to be one of the only guys that have any memory of that.
Yeah, that was, and then we were so excited with the new stadium being built.
Yeah,
You know.
and that was this year. It'll be 85 years.
Gosh, time goes fast too.
And we found some movies of that first year, and we have Allen Park too.
Yeah, do you have Allen Park?
We have Allen Park movies. It's just amazing. And then so you followed baseball down here, and do you remember any of the personalities that kind of come to mind while you followed?
Well, big time. I'm a Cleveland Indian fan and Pirates. Your dad said if they won, we'd go to the World Series. So I've followed them a lot. Bob Feller, of course. I would say he's probably, in my mind, who's your favorite player? And I was so disappointed in 1954 World Series. They never gave him a chance to pitch. And he had a fairly good record that year. And I hold that against the manager. But, and then Ralph Kiner, of course. That 1960 Pirate team, Don Hoke at third base, Dick Grote, of course Clemente in right field, and Bill Verdon, who I liked in center field. I always liked a lot of these center fielders because that's where I played a lot. So those are some of the names, Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
Jamestown Wise, did you follow much when you kind of were going through your years as a teacher? Did you come down to the ballpark?
Oh yeah. And when I was at Ithaca College in the spring, early spring, and they started, they played in May and April. I'd drive down to Corning, which is a half an hour away from Ithaca, and I'd watch them play. I remember, what was the bus driver's name? I remember talking to him one night.
Jerry Klein.
Yeah, Jerry Klein. He was driving the bus, and I was talking to him one night down there. So I would go down and watch him 2 or 3 times while I was at Ithaca College.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, well, you've been such an avid supporter, and talk a little bit about your family. I mean, during this time period, you meet Jerry, you married. What year did you get married?
1964. 1964. I had a son, Craig, who became a teacher and is now in Florida, working on maintenance, head of the maintenance on a big course in Florida, Venice. Mm-hmm. Keith Swanson, 2 years younger, he got into bowling, got a pro bowler's card, and was a pro bowler, but went to a lot of regionals, but never had the funds, on it. But he went to tournaments. I remember my wife Jerry and I went out to meet him at Las Vegas when he was bowling one time. So he became a bowler. Now, Pamela, the youngest, they all went to Southwestern School. Craig had a great wrestling career and coaching, and Keith was involved in basketball and then went to bowling. And Pam, she liked sports, but never was a big player. She became a cheerleader, but she went to Niagara, and now she didn't plan to be a teacher. She was in graphic artist, which she still is, but she is now teaching art at the Cleveland Institute of Art after being at the university school a few years. So she's involved in teaching, and she and her husband bought a summer cottage at Chautauqua too, and they rent it out in the summertime. So now we're going to meet them up there this weekend. They're coming in.
Did any of your kids get involved in like horseback riding and stuff like that?
No, none of that. Keith, surfing and jet ski, and he could do tricks on that stuff. That drove me nuts because I always thought he was going to get hurt, get it way up in the air and stuff. But no, none of that.
Because I remember we had a place in Panama, on what is now the Polder Road. It was over 25 years. And so my sister was involved in the Blockville Vaqueros 4-H club. I mean, it's called the Blockville Vaqueros, and Palmer. Can't think of the daughter's name, but
Debbie
yeah.
Palmer.
Yeah, but anyways, you're the guy who hired you, his daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were that whole area, that kids at the time, and there was a Swanson. Pam was, I think there was a Swanson. I don't know if it was Pam, but.
You know, talking of 4-H, I was very involved in 4-H, and we had a little chicken coop, and I raised chickens was my prize, and we had some prize-winning rooster turkeys while we raised them, and during 4-H time. Yeah, and we always had our meetings in that Blockville schoolhouse, our 4-H club.
It's funny, I hadn't thought about the Blockville Vaqueros. My dad, we'd had horse shows at our camp for a couple of years, just small time period. And so as you kind of reflect back, Durwood, on kind of, was there certain highlights that you think back on, whether it's academic, athletic, anything that sort of comes to mind?
Well, it's hard because I've been involved in so much stuff. Playing at baseball in New York was a big deal for me because I was playing against, guys that had played at a much higher level than I had been accustomed to, and I played really well in that. Of course, being involved, being president of New York State Bowling Association, got to know guys from all over the state, and bowling was huge back then. This was in the late 80s, early 90s, and so there was a lot of memories from that, a lot of friends.
And I see this, I'm looking through a scrapbook here, which, touts your athletic career, among other things, and who put the scrapbook together? Is this your mother?
What, this?
Yeah.
No, that's all on my own.
You did that on
my
that's great.
Senior year, and then the rest of my life I've kept it. I'm glad I have. I think that book, if our house ever caught on fire, would be the first thing I'd grab to take out.
Isn't that something?
And when I was in college, I didn't play college sports, but I was on a basketball team that played in Y League, and that was tough playing. And I had developed on my own a jump shot, and I was never a big scorer, but I scored 30-some points in a few games in the Y League.
Well, I'm seeing here that one of the earlier names of the teams that you had was the Jokers.
The Jokers. And as you see there, we even played a preliminary game for the Elmira Colonels. Okay. We went down to Elmira one night and played.
Did you, Clamor Central teacher receive state PTA award? There we go. A very handsome Durwood Swanson. My gosh, tough news. And this is fantastic that you kept all of this stuff together. And did you ever do any? You did refereeing, or you did track?
Oh yes, I did track for 15 years, high school track, and did 4 New York State meets out in Newburgh, and some indoor meets, New York State at Cornell University. Joe Paternini was president all those years of our track. But I was a referee and I'd refereed at every school in New York's Chautauqua County and Cattaraugus County, most of them, and as far east as Cuba, going to rough.
Well, here, I just want to name some names here. You were dropping names of the players you played with, because you're often associated, when the players you play with kind of elevate you. So here's the National Worsted players won the weekend's Jamestown Open softball tournament. Those were serious stuff, defeating Betts. I mean, so
We beat it, Warren Betts, which
I mean
was
that's
very
serious.
good.
And so just to name names here, there's Bob Winterburn, Jack Fulford, Ron Spetz, John Damon, manager Chief Catania, Andy Indelicato, Bill Cardosi, and Durwood Swanson, Jim Adamsack, MVP, Jerry Eggleston, Fran Chiappetta, Carl Piloteri, Bill Hansel. Bill was a pitcher, right?
Yes, yes, he was.
Yeah, Dick Vaughn, Izzy Cardozi, you know, and it's just like a who's who of the names that I remember. Now, I would have been 10 years old, been one of those young kids watching it, especially when you used to play at Bergman Park and
Roseland Park.
well,
too.
Roseland, yeah. And then later on would have been the Bergman.
Well, yeah,
later-
Bergman was the big one, yeah, later on. But Roseland, for a number of years, before Bergman, they built those fields, was the big place. And we'd get, they generated crowds over 1,000 up there on a night game.
It was insane, just insane. And you're in that. I mean, you're in that group.
Yeah,
There's Durwood Swanson and Jim Adamsack in the same sentence.
yeah, played on that team. Chief Catania got that team together for that big tournament that Jamestown used to have in August.
Well, Betts was the big team from Warren.
Yeah, they had a good pitcher too, but we beat them.
Was that? And I know for a time there was a guy named Tommy Irons.
Yeah, he was from Olean.
Yes.
And now that you met Tommy Irons, threw a lot of no-hitters. I think I hit the ball the hardest I've ever hit one. It was a line drive about a foot off the ground to third base, and the third base, I didn't even step out of the batter's box. I hit it so hard, and that's wasn't a hit. It was just a line out. But I thought, man, off Tom Irons hit a ball that hard. That was really something.
Now, what made Jim Adamsack so good? I mean, it's fast, but
He was fast, but he had a riser. And that ball would, you'd think it was right over the middle of the plate, and all of a sudden it'd jump, and you'd swing under it. And no one could hit that in this area to speak of. And people would move way up in the batter's box, thinking, try to get it before it rises. But no one really found any success at that. And he had finally got good control. I can remember when he first started, he didn't have good control. But once he got going, you know, he's the best of the best,
yeah,
in my mind.
yeah. And, well, you know, anybody. I mean, there's no dispute. I mean, when we were talking to all those guys at that event at the you know, where the kind of reunion. I mean, there's Jim Adamsack, and then there were a lot of others.
Yeah.
Later on, Ron Fredericks was good, and others were good, but
Yeah,
there
but
was-
they weren't in his class.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I love looking at this. And here we go, city tournament, Jamestown Mayor, Don Ulstrom and Durwood Swanson. There we go.
Yeah, I won the city title in doubles one year, and had a team, the Swanson Islanders, that won the city championship. I had a lot of success in bowling, administrative and bowling.
Well, here you are. You're named into the Area Bowling Hall of Fame in
Oh, yeah.
1991.
Yeah, that's in the Chautauqua County Hall of Fame, a plaque that has my name on it.
My golly. Well, it's a long, long list of things. And there's your picture installed as the National NYSBA president.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see why you would pick this up the first thing if there's a fire. You better pick up Jerry first.
Yeah, usher her out.
Yeah. Usher her out, then come back and get this. Yeah, there's a lot of articles in this, just so everybody for the camera. There's articles because he was a prolific writer. He was on the Jammers Executive Advisory Board, and I was involved, and everybody. It was just sort of the time. Well, it was the time when the Bisons took over. I mean,
Yes.
the Riches.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when we kicked in,
Yeah.
and that was
exciting. You know, being close to the boys. I remember going up there a couple times on a bus we had.
That's
and,
right. And then you had an autograph too. You look at Dave Brubeck, Winston Marsalis. This is pretty good stuff here. And there's a picture. Oh my gosh, even you got me in here.
Yeah, you're in that book quite a few times.
Now I've arrived. I've made it into the Durwood Swanson book. Oh man, this is exciting. Well, I'm so excited that you came here.
Well, I want to thank you for having me. I was super nervous when thinking about it, but you made me feel at ease in your interviews. And so, because you've done so many, you know how to do it.
Well, I enjoy, and everybody's got a story, Durwood, and yours is as good as anybody's.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Okay, thank you.